Welcome to a journey of transformation and discovery. In the pages of this text, you will immerse yourself in a world of magic and infinite possibilities. With Conny Méndez's pen as our guide, we will explore together the mysteries of positive thinking and conscious manifestation. Imagine a universe where your thoughts are powerful seeds, capable of cultivating the reality you desire. In this text, you will learn to cultivate the garden of your mind with thoughts of love, gratitude, and abundance. You will discover the ancestral secret of how your inner vibrations can shape the world around you. Join us on this exciting journey towards conscious creation. As you listen to Conny Méndez's words, you will feel your spirit soar and your heart open to new possibilities. Allow yourself to dive into the timeless wisdom of this text and discover the transformative power of thinking good thoughts. Get ready to unleash your true potential and manifest the life of your dreams, because remember, in the garden of your mind, goodness flourishes when you cultivate thoughts of love and gratitude. Let's embark on this journey together towards the magic of thinking good thoughts and receiving abundance. Introduction. The most sincere convictions are accessible to anyone over 10 years old with average intelligence, provided they are presented in a simple manner with practical applications to everyday life. This is particularly true when addressing subjects of philosophy and metaphysics in an understandable format, containing a treasure trove of teachings to achieve a prosperous, happy life, assured against all common evils that afflict human beings. However, technical jargon surpasses the understanding of the ordinary person. One could say that the great thinkers and teachers, far from desiring to share this treasure with the majority, have done everything to hide it behind rhetorical barricades and special expressions. I am merely following the teachings of my master, Dr. Hamer Fax, attempting to render this metaphysical treasure intelligible, albeit in a condensed manner, by presenting it in terms of everyday life. Nothing appearing here is new. Everything has been transmitted since Enoch, whom the Bible traces back to as the sixth descendant of Adam. Jesus spent years hidden in the Essene monastery of Cumbre, where he was educated according to the teachings of Enoch. Later, in the controversy that arose between Jews and Christians, all the texts of Enoch were gathered and burned by both sides, except for a few copies that some individuals managed to hide. The early Christians wanted to erase any indication that the Master's teaching had a Jewish origin, and the Jews repudiated Jesus and destroyed anything that could identify them with him. The authorities of the Christian Church altered and mutilated their texts wherever it was indicated that the teaching came from Enoch. The result was the New Testament, which leaves the core of truth in obscurity. The monastery was also destroyed, but the Essenes managed to save their precious library, which they hid in caves, now being discovered and called the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Rockefeller Organization established a large facility in the region dedicated to the authentication and translation of the scrolls that appear, including the originals of Enoch and the authentic texts of the Bible. Dynamic Christianity teaches that before embarking on any task, the candidate must receive instructions or study the necessary technique to carry it out. However, human beings are the only ones who launch into life without a compass, without a defined plan, relying solely on secondary materials, and without basic preparation. They thus venture into a labyrinth hoping not to fall into misfortune. Some lives unfold in opulence and satisfaction, while others unfold in misery. The former begin with all the advantages of education, science, medicine, religion, and all the precautions that affection and fortune can imagine, but they are followed by a series of calamities. What is the cause of this collection of differences? The first law of creation is as follows. What you think will not only manifest in your body and character, but also externally in material things, in your conditions, and in what happens to you. Your own conception is what you see come to pass. If you conceive that health is the natural state of man, you have a healthy constitution, whatever you do. If your conception is that wealth is inevitable, you will always be rich. If you consider your destiny to be poverty, accidents, death, the pangs of old age, bad luck or good luck, you will be the victim of misfortune or deserving of all that is best. Constant struggle or effortless fullness, everything you normally expect or anticipate for good or ill, is the condition in which you live and what you will see manifest. One is never aware that most of these concepts form involuntarily when the laws of creation are ignored. They constitute the compass, and the raw material with which a child should be equipped before learning the alphabet. From what you have read so far, you will understand that man is not what has always been believed, a cork tossed about by the storm here and there according to the waves. His world, his circumstances, and everything that happens to him in life are his own creations and no one else's. He is responsible for the order of his life. If his conception of life is that he is in a storm and he is a cork in the midst of it, so it will be, because he has ordered and allowed it. He is the king of his own world. This means that he has free will, the freedom to choose to think positively or negatively. All his life, all his successes or failures, all manifestations depend on the concept he has established in his subconscious mind. Today we know that what we often think passes into the subconscious and settles there, acting as a reflection. Psychology has proven it. Metaphysics and philosophy delve further into this dynamic, although, as mentioned earlier, they present it in such a complex and confusing way that it becomes almost impossible to understand. When the poor human being finds himself caught in the effects of his ignorance, when he has caused a calamity that torments him, he turns to God and begs to be delivered from suffering. Daily experience tells us that sometimes God listens, but sometimes not. When God does not respond, the poor human being is consoled by his family and friends with the following words: "One must resign oneself to the will of God, as if God's will were bad." Jesus himself said, "Peace on earth to men of good will," which leads us to wonder if God would enjoy his heavenly peace with impunity if he were filled with ill will. Prayer is of extraordinary power because it is of a very positive degree. It is directing thought to the very source of good and love, and there is nothing higher. Good must manifest instantly. It must transform at sight like a miracle what needs to be transformed. The first fundamental law of creation establishes that the concept a person has of God governs their life. If someone perceives God as a capricious magnate, filled with ill will, sending trials and punishments rather than rewards and benefits, that person will live the manifestation of that divine concept. It's as simple as that. So why does it happen? Some people wonder why God, being all-powerful, does not intervene to prevent certain events and situations from occurring. It's because God is an unchanging principle, which means he does not change, and no one can violate him or violate the other principles he has created. If he created you with free will, he is the first to respect it. You choose your concepts, opinions, desires, thoughts, you give your orders, and he is the first to take them into account. If the human being we are talking about elevates his mind to the divine level, that is, if he seeks to alleviate his distress and strives to think of positive things, then he will witness the miracle he seeks. This happens because he has strayed from the path. He has entrusted his problem to God, that is, to the plan of love that's called faith. You will see that faith is a system, a way of acting. Faith has two names, faith and fear. Both are the same thing and the same force. It is called faith when one expects good. It is called fear when one expects evil. It's as simple as that. When you feel fear, you anticipate something bad. You expect it with all your might, and it does not take long to come, because you call it, and it must respond because you command it. When you have the intuition that something is going to happen, usually you triumphantly proclaim it by saying, "I already knew it, I sensed it." And of course you are right, but now you will see that it was not inevitably going to happen, and that your higher faculties or your evident gifts announced it to you. Your thought created it by attracting what was necessary for it to manifest. Every thought accompanied by a feeling manifests more quickly and intensely. This is part of the first law. Fear is a powerful feeling, which is why everything created by the combination of thought and fear is so terrifying. Road accidents resulting in death or disability, heart attacks, cancer, gastric ulcers, and so many other atrocities that afflict humanity. I see you undoubtedly thinking about the material causes of all these things. I see you protesting inwardly, because material cause has always been given importance. For example, germs and microbes responsible for many diseases are actually effects, not causes. The original cause lies in the mind. The germ is just one link in a chain. The disease is the link that follows. I'm trying to go back, not forward, in the order of creation. The material cause is a finished product already. The original basic concept is thought. Everything that comes afterward outside is nothing but the material available for the work's realization. Do you understand me? Faith and fear are like the two sides of the same coin. On one side there is fear, and on the other there is faith. Faith is a positive force, while fear is negative. No one fears that something will happen if they do not consider it bad. Thought accompanied by faith is powerful and manifests quickly and forcefully. Similarly, one can learn to have faith. This comes through knowledge. By learning to use the machinery of faith, all fear disappears. You know that the capital of your country is located in such and such a place. You have this knowledge because you have been taught it. You do not question it, and you know that if you take the train, plane, or car to go to the capital, you are indeed heading toward the capital, not the moon. That's faith. You have faith in the existence of the capital and in the idea that your desire or need leads you there. You have faith that you will get there. You do not fear going to the moon. Knowledge dispels doubt. Faith eliminates fear. So you now know that negative thinking produces an effect called bad, and positive thinking produces an effect called good. You understand the danger of associating fear with danger. These negative results of negative thoughts and fear are what churches and good people have believed to be sent by God. You realize the extent of this mistake. Jesus said, "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he." Here, everything is expressed in a single capsule. Thought united with feeling. Thinks in the heart. And the phrase in lowercase, "so is he," encompass everything in one chapter. For man and his world are one. Man, everything he reproduces, externalizes, manufactures, possesses and gathers in his environment, are one with him, and he, with everything that has been listed, is an exact reflection of the image he has anchored in his soul. Solomon said it even more clearly. For as he thinks within himself, so he is. Eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you. Proverbs 23:7. The mechanics of thought work throughout the day and night. We constantly think about a multitude of different things. A sort of constant mental film runs through our mind, but it is often disjointed. Among all these different ideas, some stop us. We mentally contemplate them, perhaps reflect on them, discuss them with someone, and then replay them later. These ideas turn into mental images. The mental image is what passes into the subconscious, settles there, and then returns. What psychologists call reflexes. Psychologists study only the reflexes that govern behavior and mental aversions. Metaphysicians cover a much broader field, and they know that reflexes govern not only man but also everything that happens to him externally. The more deeply we contemplate or study an idea, the more deeply its reflection is rooted in our subconscious. The subconscious makes no distinctions, does not reason, it simply fulfills its function. It has no capacity to protest or have its own will, nor does it understand humor, and does not differentiate between what we have ordered it seriously or jokingly. Its main task is to store mental images, then project them outward as if they were static copies, like a printer that prints what has been stored there. It's like a robot, an exceptional archivist and librarian, because it only retains the mental images we provide it. Once we have handed it an image, it begins to reproduce it on every occasion that arises throughout the rest of our lives, until we give it the order to replace it with another. It's like a printing machine, printing what we have stored in it over time, and it continues to do so as long as we are alive. For example, do you remember the first time you heard about a cold? You can't remember it. You were very young. The news came from your elders, so you didn't question it. You accepted it as something natural. Then you were taught to fear it. You were warned about the causes of the cold, and you were told that if you sweated and came into contact with a friend with a cold, if you got wet in the rain or stood in a draft, you would inevitably catch a cold. All of this you mentally visualized in detail, and it passed into your subconscious, and you no longer needed to remember these warnings. You never consciously thought about them again, but your subconscious faithfully reproduced a good cold. The best it could produce every time you got chilled, found yourself in a draft, were near someone with a cold, or got wet in the rain. Notice you never had to think about it again, but your subconscious never forgot the command, and until today, it gladly delivers to you, like someone offering a gift, an excellent cold every time you neglect to take care of yourself, because you are now accustomed to protecting yourself and telling your friends that you can't stand drafts. You even say about someone who has a cold, "Stay away, I have a cold," and you even call it "my cold." All of this renews and reinforces the command given to the subconscious, as if it needed it. This mechanism is the same for all other ailments that afflict human beings, from colds to death, accidents, struggles, old age, poverty, misfortune, ugliness, sins, disasters, wars, monetary crises, enmities, etc. Men vary, but the process of reproduction is always the same. The law I'm explaining to you is called the principle of mentalism. It's the first law of creation. This is how the mental universe works. This is what metaphysics means when it says, everything is spirit. The laws of creation are 7 in number. The truth of well-being is that we are not obliged to endure forever the punishment contained in a poorly formed concept. We are free, and if we wish, we can change it for a concept that brings us satisfaction, rewards and blessings. Just as the old image was created, the new image is created. You just have to first erase the old one, to free up space, to avoid filling it with the new image, just as erasing an incorrect letter in a written word to replace it with another, or delete it. Experience has determined the technique to follow to erase anything undesirable, which is as follows. Whenever something unpleasant happens to you, think, then repeat aloud, I do not accept it, I deny it, I reject it. Do not let yourself be disturbed. Do not put emphasis on what you say. Just say it calmly, with the faith that your word is a command that must be executed unconditionally at that moment. Perhaps you will not immediately see the change that occurs within you. Perhaps you will not immediately see the result on the outside, unless you are very attentive to small signs. But depending on the degree of faith and conviction you feel in formulating the negation, that's how the result will be. If your faith and conviction are strong, the result will be instantaneous, like a miracle. Experience has taught us that we cannot leave a void or half empty. We must immediately fill the space freed up. Once you have expressed the negation, you must affirm the truth, as metaphysical language says. The truth is the new image that will be engraved and reproduced forever, the good. We want this image to be the best possible, to be the total truth and not a half-truth, because God's will is truth. Indeed, God is truth and good, as Jesus taught. In every man there is God. In every man exists the divine being. Every man manages to see it, to know it, and to feel it sometimes during his earthly life. It manifests itself when a father sees his newborn for the first time, when he falls in love for the first time, when he rushes to save someone about to be crushed by the wheels of a car, when he feels compassion for the misery of others, when he forgets himself to perform a heroic act. In all these moments the divine being acts. After this moment, earthly consciousness prevails. It is not bad. It is simply evolving or asleep. The divine being is the truth, yours, mine, and everyone's. It is perfect, beautiful, does not age, does not get sick, does not die, does not suffer, does not struggle, has nothing to learn, knows everything, never makes mistakes, never changes, does not fear, does not doubt, and is attentive to every prayer, even the most insignificant. It is the perfect truth, love, intelligence, life, soul, spirit, and principle. That is the 7 aspects of God, because the divine being is the Son of God, a cell of God himself. This is not pantheism. Man is not God, just as a drop of seawater is not the sea, but in a single drop of seawater are all the components of the rest of the sea. It is a cell of the sea, just as our consciousness is asleep, restricted, like a rosebud gradually opening. We do not know exactly what good and truth are. We would like someone to show us, teach us, and dictate the image we should engrave. We have this someone in the divine being. Jesus said, Know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. All you have to do when you're going to create a new image to replace the old one is to simply remember the divine being. He will inspire the new image. Let's say you feel like you have a cold. Following the original example, you now understand that the result is a reflection of the image you have engraved in your subconscious. You know that the cold is just a reflection. If you don't like the cold because there are people who enjoy illnesses and feel important because of them, you simply deny it, reject it, do not accept it, and then remember your divine being. By transferring your thought from the cold to the truth of being, you connect, just like a plug in a phone socket, to the corresponding truth, and you see the new image you must engrave, the image opposite to the disease, which is life. You must say aloud, I am life. Life is health. Health is the opposite of illness. Health is the only truth. Proceed on this path as much as you wish. Remember that you are forming an image. The clearer you see it, the better for you. Think of the good. This is very different from autosuggestion because autosuggestion simply involves repeating like a parrot a stereotyped optimistic phrase, always the same. Autosuggestion does not dig and explore the surface without penetrating the subject and without knowledge. The truth of being reasons, investigates, solves, penetrates, and destroys the cause, cleanses, heals and renews the subconscious, strengthens it, advances the human being, and broadens his consciousness. It is a true, safe and radical remedy, a safe healing for effects, and sins, because these are also reflections and engraved images. The so-called original sin is nothing but the concept, that is, the image that leads to the reflection. Churches believe it is man's fault. However, the divine being constantly lives in what we call the heavenly atmosphere, the atmosphere of good. Do not forget it, for it is also pure truth. The more you identify with this atmosphere, the more you reproduce it in your daily life. The sensation that most resembles what the sons of God must feel constantly is the one we experience when we receive a magnificent gift, when we thank for a gift that fills us with satisfaction. It's a mixture of joy and tenderness, isn't it? Well, that's the state of mind of the one who dwells in heaven, and that's the nature of the divine being. When you are in this state of mind, evil retreats because it cannot stand this atmosphere. It does not like it. It does not suit it. Therefore, the third step that experience has taught us to follow in the practice of the truth of being is as follows. Every time you have finished what metaphysical language calls a treatment, that is, a denial and an affirmation, always thank God as if you had already received the reward. End your treatment with an expression of immense gratitude for the good already received. It is a manifestation of faith. St. Paul said, faith is the evidence of things not seen. And Jesus said, whenever you pray, believe that you receive and you will receive. This treatment is written and set forth in the Bible, of course, in biblical terms, so symbolic and veiled, that it took the dedicated work of experts in semantics, linguistics, classical philology and symbolism to decipher its meaning. The Bible calls it Manasseh and Ephraim and has much to say about it, about these two brothers. Jesus Christ taught it as follows. He who wants to attain eternal life must deny himself and follow me. He did not mean that you had to follow the man Jesus, but the Christ. The word Christ comes from the Greek Christos, which means the anointed one, that is, the Son of God. The truth in the New Testament, as I said at the beginning, is my effort to express in simple terms, suitable for someone over 10 years old and of ordinary intelligence, the meaning of metaphysical, philosophical, psychological and religious treatises that are very obscure for most people and therefore completely forbidden and despised, although they are an invaluable treasure. Nothing of what I present here is new. Everything has been said, discovered and taught since ancient times. It is simply ignored or misunderstood. In any biology textbook you will find explained in technical terms what I will now describe in simple terms. When you frown and wrinkle your face, a reaction occurs in the lower spinal cord, near the column fluid, which then enters the liver after going through a process called osmosis. Once in the liver, it transforms cholesterol into bile. Bile alters the mood by making you bitter, and this bad mood makes you frown and wrinkle your face. It's a vicious circle that keeps you in an infernal atmosphere where evil feels comfortable, feeds and grows, attracting everything that resembles it and floats nearby. Now let's reverse the process to see what happens when you feel with frowning brows and a wrinkled face, or when you walk past a mirror and notice your expression. Force yourself to smile and relax those tense muscles. It is a duty to your health and your soul. Immediately the cerebrospinal fluid is transformed, and when it reaches the liver, it acts as a blessing. You feel happy, joyful, you breathe deeply, your expression softens. You are in a heavenly climate where evil does not thrive, it flees. Only good happens. You choose to live in heaven or in hell. As above, so below. As below, so above, as Hermes said to explain the second law of creation, called the principle of correspondence. For our needs, the example I gave in the 2 preceding paragraphs is sufficient. You will see that the body and the mind complement each other. They must walk together and act in concert. You cannot separate them. If the human being is happy, he serves the divine. If man is unhappy, he moves away from the divine and therefore does not serve God, because the divine in every human being is a cell of God, that is, the Son of God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Thus begins his gospel with the apostle. Until now, it had been believed that the Word could be none other than Jesus Christ. The first 14 verses of his gospel were written by John as a lesson and a metaphysical affirmation to prepare his mind for what he was about to say, so that everything would be in accordance with the truth. I summarized the verses to avoid unduly lengthening these texts. The affirmation has no connection with the gospel itself. The word means what speech is, but expressed in the poetic and grandiloquent terms that were so appreciated at that time. The word is the spoken thought, and it is in this sense that John used it, invoking truth to speak through him. It became flesh. It was the decree for it to manifest, and it dwelt among us. It is the reaffirmation of this decree. At the same time, it is a formula for prosperity. In the beginning, John was intimately instructed by the master of Christian metaphysics himself, and we are amazed at how he was able to express the process that the phrase "he became flesh and dwelt among us" indicates. In addition to confirming faith at once, faith is the evidence of things not yet seen. The entire Bible is a poem. Jesus said, "By your words you will be condemned, and by your words you will be justified." One cannot express this truth more clearly. He also said, "It is not what enters the mouth that defiles a man, but what comes out of the mouth, for what comes out of the mouth comes from the heart." Another clear way to express this truth, he said to the Jews, to challenge their belief that it was wrong to eat certain things, like the belief of eating in the company of Gentiles. However, none of this has been taken seriously by the churches and the people. It is unforgivable among priests. They continue to speak nonsense without realizing that every word they utter is a decree that manifests in them and in their lives, and especially all this about the will of God being something unpleasant and difficult to accept. I suggest you decide one day to pay attention to everything you say during that day. You will be surprised by the amount of negative decrees that will come out of your mouth. I will remind you of some that most people use daily. Business is very bad, things are going very wrong, the youth is lost, traffic is impossible, the service is unbearable, we cannot find service. Do not leave this money here because bandits will steal it. Bandits attack at every street corner. You will fall. You will kill yourself. You will break this glass. I am so unlucky. I cannot try this. It hurts me. My rheumatism, my allergy, my migraine, my bad digestion. He is a bandit. It is a calamity, etc., etc. Once the decree is spoken, it begins to manifest, and all this is a lie in the light of the truth of being. All this is said out of habit without even thinking about it, because everything that has been recorded with word and feeling has been accepted by thought. Of course, the images are already crystallized in the subconscious, coming from many past lives. At first, your consciousness will not perceive the possibility of reforming everything, but by unrolling the thread, we arrive at the thread. It takes a gram of goodwill. It takes the expressed or simply felt desire to start or undo any crystallization. Just every time you find yourself expressing a negative thought, deny it, reject it, and say that you no longer accept these concepts. Then go towards the truth of being. Thank with all your heart for the sublime opportunity that has been offered to you to clean your subconscious and heal your soul at once. You have confessed, you have repented, and you have forgiven yourself, because confession and forgiveness are valid only for oneself. Then, if you are Catholic, you can follow the precepts of your church if you wish, but the first person to forgive must be oneself. There are people who never forgive themselves for failing at something and therefore hate themselves. That is pride and revenge. With what right do they seek forgiveness from another? Jesus said, "Out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks, and out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks good." Love your neighbor as yourself means allowing oneself to love oneself, first of all, and then to have respect and dignity towards others. Accept yourself as you are, without excessive demands, and understand that failure is human and forgiveness is divine. First, speak the word of truth for yourself so that you can speak it for others. The word is the expressed thought, and then it is governed by the first law of creation, which classical texts call the principle of mentalism. I've already explained the first law to you in the first 4 chapters, and I have completed it in this section by inserting an idea of the second law of creation, that is, the principle of correspondence in the previous chapter, because all the laws are interconnected and depend on each other, and at this stage it was appropriate to expose it. The dictionary defines the word vibration as a rapid oscillation. Most people think that only sounds emanate from vibration, but everything vibrates. Vibration is measured by its speed, that is, by the number of oscillations that occur in 1 second of time, and the way to express it is as follows. This vibration has a frequency of so much, that is, it vibrates at a certain frequency. Among colors, white is the union of all colors seen in light. It is the one that vibrates at the highest frequency. Black is also the union of all colors, although seen in shadow, and it has the lowest frequency of all, that is, a frequency of 0 for our understanding. Thoughts emit vibrations that spread in all directions, much like the ripples that form in water when you throw a stone into it. Negative thoughts are dark, and therefore vibrate at low frequencies. People rightly call them dark thoughts. Positive thoughts are bright, and as they draw closer to the truth, they become increasingly brilliant, eventually becoming radiant when they express absolute truth, which is God. High frequencies dominate low frequencies. Thoughts of high truth dissolve dark, low and false thoughts, acting like dynamite on a rock. This will help you understand what happens when you place the thought and word of truth on a mass of dark crystallization. That's why I told you that the felt desire was enough to start undoing the crystallizations accumulated in the subconscious. Some people have developed this ability. We all have this faculty, but most have not developed it. They recognize thoughts by their color, and since they know the external outcome of each type of thought, they can predict the future. They clearly see the inevitable product of each person. Thoughts of love and goodwill are pink and bright. Thoughts of sexual passion are intense red. The color of life thoughts is yellow. The color of intellectual thought is what is now called chartreuse, very bright. Mystical thoughts are purple, iridescent and deep. When negativity is mixed with these colors, the hue becomes dirty. For example, in a person whose intelligence is not yet developed or is numb, the color is mustard. Sexual passion, when not understood and guided only by animal instinct, is reddish-brown. Mental vibrations form an egg-shaped aura around the body, and within this aura, one sees the entire composition of colors emanating from individual thought. The clean and positive subconscious produces a bright, multicolored work, like the dawn of a pearl. As high frequencies dominate low frequencies, no negative thought from the outside can penetrate a positive aura and environment. For them to penetrate an individual's mind, that person must harmonize with them, meaning they must begin to think negatively. The law of attraction is unshakable, and it orders that each thing attracts its likeness. The images recorded in the subconscious inevitably attract anything resembling them and repel anything that is not in line with them. That's why if a person's concept is good, only the good is seen because they cannot attract what is not in line with their concept. Nothing evil can approach them, and conversely, a person filled with closed concepts can only attract bad things because it is impossible for them to attract anything else. This is the explanation of the phenomenon called panic contagion. Have you ever noticed how, when diving into meditation or recalling an incident, such as a bad experience or an offense received, you feel a surge of indignation and resentment? Now you understand that you attract similar thoughts that come to amplify the intensity of your emotions. It is these related thoughts that gather and strengthen, creating a spiral of negativity that can affect your emotional well-being. It is essential to be aware of this process and learn to steer your thoughts towards a more positive and constructive perspective. This law never allows its mind to dwell on a single unpleasant idea. When such a thought arises, it rejects it, confronts it with the truth of being, and immediately turns to something positive. I hope you grasp the importance of maintaining a joyful mindset and living in a heavenly atmosphere. Think of the good, and it will be given to you, thanks to the law of attraction. When a thought leaves the mind, it seeks its likeness and groups with them. In the atmosphere, there are immense masses of thoughts, resembling clouds. If the collective concept of a city is pessimistic, these clouds are dark, hovering over the city, surrounding its inhabitants, going where they are drawn. They keep the entire population in the same vision, which explains the distinct characteristics of different nationalities and races. Have you ever wondered why, when you enter a house, you feel a heavy or joyful atmosphere, as if it hits you as soon as you enter? Have you noticed the heavy and sad atmosphere at a funeral? Have you felt the oppression in an empty house without understanding why? Not long ago, I accompanied a friend in search of an apartment. When we entered one that looked very beautiful and elegant, we both felt uncomfortable. We discussed it, and the next day we were informed that several tragedies had occurred there. People with a positive mindset lighten the atmosphere, while dark masses recede, only to return when the disturbing individual is no longer present. A trained metaphysician can leave a lasting beneficial imprint when coming into contact with such an atmosphere, because their mere presence disperses the darkness, much like night fades away when a light is turned on. Where does darkness go when the sun rises? Nowhere. It transforms into light. The person who has already succeeded in transforming their conceptions, in forming the habit of consulting and connecting everything to the divine being, has the power to dissolve the crystallizations of others by simply thinking truthfully in the face of others' wrongdoings. This explains the healings and miracles of Jesus. The commandment to love your neighbor as yourself does not mean that we are obliged to feel affection. Forgiving one's enemies, doing good to those who persecute and hate you, and turning the other cheek simply means that when evil enters someone else, we must think of their divine being and declare the truth in a simple, easy, and direct manner. There is no more practical way to dissolve any resentment we might feel. Often someone says, "I forgive, but I cannot forget." If you are one of those, try what I told you. You don't need to talk to the person who offended you. You don't even need to look at them. It's better not to look at them because you wouldn't be able to divert your thoughts from what they did to you. Just think of their divine being, for it is yourself in everyone. Address that divine being, and instantly you will know how to treat them. This means that the idea of truth you must invoke against hatred and disharmony is love. Against sickness and the threat of death, it is life. Against stupidity, it is intelligence. Against disorder, it is principle. Against absurd barriers, arbitrary borders, legally illogical prohibitions, of which I will give you some examples to teach you to correctly use the truth. Disadvantages of passports, delays in document delivery, traffic troubles, bureaucratic paperwork, political and governmental inconsistencies. Against all this, remember that the Spirit is divine. God is Spirit. Who can stop, delay, prevent, forbid or oppose absurd barriers towards God? What prevents the Spirit from passing? All this is truth. The thought that turns towards truth vibrates at the highest frequency, and no other lower frequency can dominate it. There is only one danger: allowing impatience or anger to mix with a thought of truth. All spiritual work must be done calmly. My master demanded even more. He recommended that all spiritual work be done as if painting a picture on a spider web. This is because the vibrations of spiritual thought are of such a high frequency and such great power that they must be handled with great delicacy. Vibration is the third law of creation. Void does not exist, and this is increasingly proven in this century. The air is filled with atoms and dust particles. The atom is half spirit and half matter, as it is the beginning of spirit, invisible and energy. The atom is at the border between matter and spirit. Nature cannot stand a vacuum. Leave a small, abandoned and forgotten pot of earth, and soon a little green shoot will grow there. The same goes for a container of water. Tiny life larvae will quickly develop there. Nature does not tolerate waste. Everything is becoming useful. Everything serves something and someone, and everything has its exact place. Every human being comes to earth with a place already prepared for them, with a task to accomplish, endowed with a special talent that predisposes them to the work and position that belongs to them. Just as every fingerprint is unique in the world, and in all of Earth's history, every individual is also unique. Their supposed place or position is solely theirs. No one else can do the work in their place. If the place that belongs to them is temporarily occupied by someone else, both individuals will feel frustrated, uncomfortable, and they will do poorly what they do at that moment. The task that belongs to each of us. Whether it's in commerce, the arts, letters, religion, government, or agriculture, it's very easy to determine. Everyone is capable of knowing their unique place, the one that corresponds to what they most love to do in the world, something that doesn't seem like work. When doing it, one forgets everything to the point of considering it absurd to be paid for it because they enjoy it so much. This corresponds to the second law of creation, namely the principle of correspondence. If you feel misaligned, search within yourself for that unique thing you love to do. Declare that your place is waiting for you. Meet people with similar affinities. Head towards the place you prefer most and ask your divine being to guide you to find it. Do the same when you see someone unemployed or without purpose in life. Declare the truth for them by saying that unemployment is a false idea, that harmony results from alignment, that there is no void, disorder, or waste. It is a universe based on order and harmony among all its parts. When something is missing, whether it's a screw, a partner, a spoon, or a sum of money, or even a parking space or a competent and honest cook, declare the truth. Nature abhors a vacuum, harmony, and misalignment. Thus, you will see the complement appear in one way or another. What you lack is in excess in someone else, and what you need is in excess in someone else. Supply and demand are part of the fourth law of creation, the principle of rhythm. A young man consulted me in the same vein. He was losing all his jobs and feeling misaligned everywhere. "I'm good for nothing. I don't do anything right," he told me. I asked him, "What do you enjoy doing?" He replied, "Nothing. I enjoy doing nothing." "And why are you losing all your jobs?" "Because I get bored and start arguing with my co-workers. I disturb them, and they waste time for the company." Well, if what you're saying and the way you present it exerts such magnetism, you should consider a career in public relations. Keep looking until you find it. It's waiting. And it happened. When I saw him again, he was radiating with satisfaction. I remember the truth to which Jesus referred when he said, "Consider the birds of the sky. They do not sow or reap or gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Aren't you more valuable than they? Consider how the lilies of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his glory was adorned like one of these." This doesn't mean we're allowed to indulge in laziness and wait for food and clothing to fall from the sky. It means that each in their appropriate place will have everything they need without work or effort. Birds don't have to sow, reap, or stockpile. That's only for man who finds his greatest pleasure in it. The mission of birds is to maintain the flying species and contribute to the angelic plan. For humans, their mission is to revive sight and hearing. As for flowers, they're not meant to work by spinning fabrics. Their task is simply to bloom. Besides beautifying and delighting the sight, They also provide honey and pollen to complement the work of bees. The higher spirit takes care of the rest. Thus, each of us, in our natural place, is in harmony, happy, and fulfilling the function entrusted to us. The higher spirit completes the law and represents the right of conscience. We've lived hundreds of lives before the one we're living now. We've been an atom, a drop of water, a plant, a mineral, an animal, and a human being. In our human phase, we've been men or women many times, and we've belonged to all social levels. At each level, we've learned the lessons specific to that level. If today we're people surrounded by advantages, comforts, and modern progress, it's because we've earned it throughout our journey. Every object we possess, whether inherited, bought, or given, is in our possession because, in a past life, we learned to use it and got used to it. The image of that object is already engraved in our subconscious, and unless we dissolve it ourselves, the object will always remain with us. This acquired right is called in metaphysical language the right of conscience, which means we can never lose any object or be stolen from. How could we lose or be stolen from an image that is engraved in our subconscious? This is part of the fourth law of creation, of which Jesus said, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal." This doesn't mean we must collect virtues and despise earthly possessions. The Master explained this law by saying, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." This phrase was mistranslated and altered when it was transposed from Aramaic, the language of Jesus, into Latin. When an object is misplaced or lost from our possession, if we remember that we own it by virtue of the right of conscience engraved in our subconscious and that this image is unshakable, we can make the object reappear. Someone will return it to us, we'll find it ourselves, or we'll receive a similar gift without any effort. Now, the object will return to our hands because we know and apply this law. Remember to do it. Don't be tormented or fearful of thieves. Your thought about it becomes positive, and no one with ill intentions can approach you. I recommend you try it next time you lose something. Declare the following: "Nothing that belongs to me by virtue of the right of conscience can be lost or stolen." Then thank for the immense gift conferred upon us by such a wise law. When the object returns to your hands, which won't take long to happen, thank again. My master used to say that one who knows the law of the right of conscience and applies it until it becomes their concept can leave a high-value bill in the middle of a busy street, and no one will see it. The next day they'll find it in the same spot. For this, it's necessary to already have the concept formed and to have completely dissolved the image of fear of thieves. I know that the first time I applied the law, obediently and without having the conviction implanted in me, I was in New York, and I had forgotten my glasses in a taxi. Upon arriving home, I realized I had lost them. As I had the teachings of metaphysics fresh in my mind, I immediately declared the truth. Nothing that belongs to me by virtue of the right of conscience can be lost. My glasses returned to me. They're in their place in front of my eyes. 4 days had passed, and the taxi service called me to come down and talk to a driver who was looking for me. "Ma'am, are these your glasses?" he asked me upon seeing me while handing over the glasses. "Yes, they are mine," I replied. "How did you know they were mine?" I found it very strange. What happened to me had never happened before. Taxi drivers must report to the office any forgotten item in case the customer claims it. I couldn't decide to return these glasses, as all the trips we make are recorded at the office. I took it upon myself to visit every client I drove that day. Of course, I had to do it outside working hours, and that's why it took me 4 days to find you. This had never happened to me before. Then I gave him a beautiful reward, and the law was engraved at that moment. Without my glasses, I couldn't see well and couldn't write. This disrupted the rhythm of my life, and this little detail altered the rhythm of a series of other things that affected others. The universe is based on order and harmony among all its parts. Polarity is a universal law. There's not a single one of your desires that you can't achieve. Everything you consider impossible to obtain, everything you deem too good to happen to you, is precisely what you desire most in the world. The desire is deep in your heart. What prevents it from emerging are fear, doubts, and the negative decrees you constantly utter to change this situation. Change poles. So far, you've acted by staying fixed on the negative pole. Move to the positive pole as follows. Declare once you've finished using the negative concepts of the past that you're now a new and different person, that you claim your good, that you desire it, and that you expect it to start manifesting immediately. Declare that you no longer want to live in an environment of evil, but in an environment of good. Declare the truth that thanks to your desire and spoken word now, you already live in the positive pole and refuse to accept any doubt about it. Now, when you desire something, practice this form of expression. Say, I desire such a thing in harmony for everyone, and if it's the divine will, thank you, Father, for you've already heard me. Thus, we avoid causing inconvenience to others as our lives are interconnected, and what's good for you might be harmful to another. Let me give an example. You and another person desire the same object. Instead of competing by aligning your desires with the general well-being, you'll receive what you seek, whether it's that object or a similar one. You'll be guided to where you'll find it, and no one will have been hurt in the process. By adopting this attitude, we align ourselves with divine truth and wisdom, promoting balance in our aspirations and respecting everyone's well-being. In this simple example, you see the object, but in many other circumstances, it won't be a tangible object, but something you believe concerns only you, while it could disrupt the rhythm of others. Never covet something someone else possesses. There's no need to dispossess someone to satisfy our desires. Everything you can desire already exists in your own reserve. Claim your own good. Often we strive to obtain something, and then we regret having gotten it. This is because what we desired was a mere whim. That's why we must always desire or ask according to the Father's will. Thus we're assured that what we manifest will satisfy us. Blessing is powerful. You can check it yourself by trying the following. Place 2 plants side by side. Water them every day, but choose one to bless and praise. Say beautiful things to it and love it. For the other, take care of it but don't bless or praise it. You'll see the result yourself. When faced with unpleasant or adverse situations, don't stop. Immediately say, this is for the good. I bless the good in this. When you bless something, its power increases, and what seemed negative transforms into a great blessing and happiness because you've made it a positive experience. Don't bless people. Bless the divine in them. Don't bless a sick person, bless the healthy organ manifesting truth. You must be particularly careful never to express something that goes against others. The law says, do not do to others what you would not want done to you. It's like a boomerang and doesn't forgive. What you do to another will come back to you, and you'll be done to as well. If you wish harm to another, that harm will come to you. If you slander or criticize others, you'll be slandered and criticized. But if you bless another, you'll find someone to bless you in return. If you help another, you'll find help when you most need it. If you forgive, you'll be forgiven. Rhythm is a pendulum. When someone hurts you, don't bless them. Bless their divine being. Mentally tell them that good be done in you, then think of something else. So, when you do something without intending to hurt or disturb others, it'll go unnoticed and no one will feel it. If you want not to be interrupted in your work, declare harmony within you. It's not harmonious to be interrupted, and God is present in this work, which at the same time is untimely. It's not possible for God to be divided into two and both parties be antagonistic. That's how the universe is made. Everything emerges from the masculine and feminine principle. Thought is masculine or positive, the soul is feminine or negative. Now you can understand what would have initially confused you. Thought, to manifest, needs to unite or marry a feeling. The soul is the seat of emotions and feelings. I've barely mentioned the soul because it's an area that has attracted much attention from men. The human soul resides in what's called the astral plane. You've surely heard a lot about it. The forces that govern this plane are called psychic. It's the realm of phenomenal experiences such as spiritualism, mediumship, and some magnetic manifestations, etc. It's a very pleasant, very entertaining, very interesting plane, but sometimes also frightening. Few people devote themselves to its study. Dazzled by its mysterious manifestations, they remain there. They make no spiritual or material progress, although they all live under the illusion of being in the truth. No student of the astral plane is ever happy, healthy, or wealthy. They fail to master their problems or shortcomings. Their concepts are negative, and they see evil like the ignorant. By their fruits you will know them, Jesus said. To solve their problems, you'll see them consulting the souls of the dead, rushing to consult people who read palms, draw cards, and predict the future. These spirits, or incarnated souls, are always at the same level of evolution as those who call them, because one can only attract what is similar to one's own consciousness, as you already know. Generally, the advice they receive is contradictory, according to the opinion of the spirit dispensing it, and they lead their victims from confusion to disaster. Psychic individuals, students of the astral plane, try to astonish others with their mysterious knowledge, which they are rarely allowed to reveal. The cycle ends up driving them crazy, because without the guidance of the divine being and truth, the astral plane becomes a maze with no way out. It's to this plane that Jesus referred when he said, "Wide is the gate, broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many are those who enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the way that leads to life, and only a few find it." Look to the divine being, for by looking at the good manifests. By always looking at the shadow, only the shadow manifests. By their fruits you will know them, says Genesis chapter 30, verse 30. This maxim is illustrated in the following story. After serving his father-in-law for many years, efficiently and loyally, without receiving any reward, Jacob asked for a wage. Laban asked him what he wanted in exchange, and Jacob replied, "Separate from your flock all the speckled and striped young goats, and all the speckled and spotted female goats. Those will be my wages." Laban agreed to the deal and separated the goats and young goats as Jacob had requested. Then Jacob took branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees and peeled off the bark so that they showed white underneath, contrasting with the dark bark. He placed these branches in the troughs where Laban's flocks drank. Whenever the animals drank water and saw the branches, the offspring they bore were speckled, striped, and spotted, exactly as Jacob had requested. Thus his flocks increased extraordinarily. It's important to note that this story is not about a moral lesson, but about exposing the law in the biblical way that what one looks at reproduces. The astral being is human. The human soul is the one that graduates to the astral plane, and it's the one that attends the sessions. It still retains its concepts intact and doesn't know how to see or judge otherwise than based on what it sees. You who seek the light and who may be a member of some sect or order called spiritual, look at the fruits of your masters and leaders. They suffer from diseases and ailments, die of tuberculosis or cancer, live by begging or demand specific contributions, or condemn money. Often they suffer from slander and persecution. By their fruits you will know them. They completely ignore the meaning of the fundamental laws. Their concepts are as erroneous as yours. What they can teach you, they flaunt with pompous titles of supreme authority. Jesus said, "Do not call anyone on earth Father, for you have one Father, and he is in heaven." They wear inappropriate clothing for the era in which we live. They're still rooted in a distant past, in pre-Christian times, when the fashion for men was the toga and tunic. Their ideas are rooted in that era. They haven't evolved a step. They restrict the freedom of action of their disciples by prescribing certain foods or imposing others. They ignore the teachings of the one they claim to follow. It is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth, he said. They have no scientific knowledge. What kind of master is one who ignores the principle of vibration, the third of the laws of Hermes, the most well-known and popular of the enlightened of antiquity? By their fruits you will know them means that you can judge their concepts by their problems, ailments, poverty, in other words, by their manifestation. Their books and texts emphasize punishment, threat, and fear. Chapter 23 of the Gospel, according to Matthew, transcribes Jesus' words about these individuals. He calls them false prophets who come to you disguised as sheep but are actually ravenous wolves. And he repeats, "By their fruits you will know them," You do not pick grapes from thorns or figs from thistles. There are sects that radiate goodness and love towards their neighbor, and their intention and goodwill are unmatched. However, they demonstrate great ignorance of the fundamental principles of creation. Some people refrain from eating meat, claiming that animal meat dirties humans with its impure vibrations, without having any knowledge of the nature of these vibrations and their frequencies. You know that pure thought cannot be soiled by impure thought, and that it neutralizes or transforms it, like light transforms darkness. One of the few ways for an animal to progress rapidly in its evolution is to serve humanity. When the opportunity to serve presents itself to an animal, the spirit that governs its entire race is filled with joy, because when one member of the group progresses, all those who follow also progress towards the human plane. The animal nature of man requires the consumption of meat at all carnal levels. Large fish eat small ones until the time comes when man is guided by his divine being, and then the desire and need to eat animal flesh disappear automatically. It should not be forced, as it goes against the universal plan. Excesses simply normalize by looking at the truth of being more frequently. The more rudimentary the consciousness, the more sacrifice is needed to advance humanity. A man who is compelled to kill an animal for the good of a community does not commit a crime, but provides a better opportunity within the animal kingdom. The law of the lower worlds prevails in the animal kingdom. When a human being kills a ferocious beast, threatening a community, for example, by killing a venomous snake endangering children's lives, eliminating parasites damaging fruit trees or plants, or eradicating pests invading homes and tormenting people, he does not commit crimes but benefits everyone, both humans and animals. Animals are not conscious. They only have the instinct for reproduction. Harmful insects, for example, by following their law, multiply excessively. Man has the duty to monitor and control them. When man reaches spiritual consciousness, he no longer needs to kill or attract pests. To drive pests out of his house, simply talking to them and addressing the spirit that governs the group is enough. I myself witnessed this miracle. I saw an advanced metaphysician get rid of cockroaches and mosquitoes that had entered his house. The metaphysician said, "Brothers," referring to the spirits of the group, "watch over your pupils. They are in disagreement with my house, which is not the appropriate place for them." Then, addressing the small animals, he said, "Go away, little creatures." And before my amazed eyes, these pests remained still for a moment, as if they had received a message. Then they hastily departed. The members of the sects we were talking about ignore everything you are hearing now. They struggle in the astral plane, or rather in the negative phase of the plane, for like everything in creation, it has two phases. The soul is astral, and it is the seat of the senses and emotions. Without them, life would have little value, as we could neither feel nor appreciate art, beauty, or music. The difference would be like that between old silent cinema compared to modern cinema with its colors, sounds, and amazing technique. Senses and emotions must be cultivated, just as one cultivates a talent, for they too are divine gifts. They must not be underestimated, ignored, or rejected in any way. They must be adjusted and balanced, and this is done by elevating thought to the divine being and its truth whenever necessary. Excesses, emotiveness, and sensuality are regulated by the soul. We cannot repress, restrain, and frustrate our emotions or deny them, nor our senses, without appealing to the truth of the divine being. This atrophies and even destroys the soul. It kills the soul or injures it and makes it sick. When this happens, man regresses to the animal plane or spends several lives trying to recover them. There are sects that teach that one must adopt complicated postures and mentally focus on a part of the body, such as the forehead or the base of the spine, and then utter a magic word to connect with God. All this belongs to the astral plane and only allows communication with the psychic forces of the astral plane. They only think about the position of the body, the forehead, the base of the spine. They do not think about God. They are not in contact with the divine being. The Bible says that God is present, and this must be taken seriously, as it is said, God is in everything, everywhere. He is present in you and in everything around you. You don't need to search for him like you would search for a needle fallen on the floor. Psalm 46 says, "Be still and know that I am God." That's all you need to do. Know that he is present and think of him. God can be contacted simply by thinking of him, by practicing the presence of God. That's how you see him, feel him, and draw closer to him, just as you become proficient by practicing the piano. The ghosts and apparitions seen in very old houses are the astral bodies of people who lived there, separated from their physical bodies. Their spirits continue to live in the past and cannot detach themselves from it. They are not aware that you see them. They live the life they had in the house as it was when they were among humans, with all their concepts intact. There are 7 planes or states of consciousness, and each plane comprises 7 subplanes. Man progresses from one plane to another, with each expansion of his consciousness. The mental plane is a state of consciousness higher than the astral plane, followed by the spiritual plane, which is the highest we can conceptualize. We know many stages of ascension in this plane, but for our purpose, it is not useful to enumerate them here. We study the mental and spiritual planes, that is, the laws that govern the attainment of these planes right here on Earth. Today is the only day we can count on. Yesterday is gone, tomorrow is not yet born. We can only live in the present. We cannot bring the future into the present. We must wait for it to live it. For this reason, we must live fully and to the best of our ability today, because that is how we prepare for tomorrow. It is essential to be conscious of the present, to live in the present, and to enjoy it. Many people spend their lives mourning the past, desperately thinking about something that is already dead. Jesus said, "Let the dead bury their dead, you go and proclaim the kingdom of God." Today's life and truth contain all potential opportunities. It is a new and blank page, and if you start the day expecting pleasant surprises, they will come to you. By always looking back, not only are you unaware of the good things ahead of you, but you also bring all the evil from the past into the present. This lesson is illustrated in the Bible by the example of Lot's wife, to whom the angels said to flee to the mountain, the spiritual plane, and not to look back, for she would be consumed. She did not obey, looked back toward the city she was leaving behind, and turned into a pillar of salt. Salt in the Bible is a symbol of crystallization, and you know what a crystallization means in the subconscious and how difficult it is to dissolve. Whoever lives in the past has this crystallization in their subconscious and does not progress a step. They stagnate, and the future brings them nothing new. The past repeats endlessly. The future has not been created in earthly terms. God lives in an eternal present. This means we must live one day at a time. Forecasting is positive. Common sense expresses divine wisdom on earth. We should not live in the past or fear the future. As Emerson said, "Nothing is to be feared but fear itself." Today always brings what it needs. Today's expenses are always covered, and financial worries are generally related to the future, never the past or immediate present. If you find yourself in a difficult financial situation, it is because you anticipated this circumstance in the past, motivated by your beliefs. Elevate your thought to the divine being with love. Unload your burden on him, and you will see the problem miraculously resolved. Don't forget to give thanks before and after. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." In the Old Testament, the same truth is expressed by saying, "Cast your burden upon the Lord, and he will sustain you." Never in the Bible is the will of God associated with trial, sacrifice, punishment, or resignation. When it speaks of the just and justice, it always refers to the correctness of thought, to the precision with which truth is focused in thought. Seek the kingdom of God and his righteousness means to seek the spiritual plane and the laws that govern it. In today's language, this means to think of good, and it will be given to you. Remember the divine being, and he will provide for your needs. Know the truth, and it will set you free, said Jesus. The terms the truth, God, the divine being, the kingdom of God, and the kingdom of heaven are interchangeable and mean the same thing. The very first words of God in what is called the Ten Commandments were as follows: I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. The Jews interpreted this to mean not to place statues in their synagogues. Today we see the truth behind this symbol. It is not about making mental images that then turn into material things, whether on earth, in water, in the heavens, or under the earth. In other words, it is not to create idols or false gods that, according to our beliefs, have more power than God. We must remember that the substance we use to create these images is the substance of God, and the product cannot be more powerful than its creator. Idols or false gods include fear, fate, evil, misfortune, luck, microbes, viruses, diseases, danger, human weakness, human wickedness, jealousy, betrayal, accidents, death, struggle, money, and everything we must face and without which we cannot live. The list is much longer, but what has been said is enough to understand the idea. Everything we fear is an idol we worship above God. An example of how we prefer God is as follows. I met a young man seriously ill, whose family informed me that they had done everything, absolutely everything, to save him, but all the most eminent doctors had condemned him. I asked them if they were Catholics. They replied yes, and that they were very devout. So I suggested to them, "Why don't you ask God?" They replied impatiently, "That's the only thing we haven't done yet, but there is no hope left," I insisted. "But for God nothing is impossible." They repeated impatiently, "But we told you he was condemned by 4 eminent doctors. What's the use of insisting?" In other words, these doctors had already pronounced his death before consulting the eminent doctors. They already thought he would be dead. Death comes from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You shall not eat of it, for in the day that you eat of it, you shall die. Genesis chapter 2. This is the first mention of death in the text left by Moses. God warned that death would come if the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil were eaten. Firstly, in the Bible and in metaphysics, eating is the symbol of thought. This means that when we eat, we appropriate the food, chew it, swallow it, and assimilate it. The same goes for when we think, as described at the beginning of this book. We receive an idea, food. We think about it determinately, chew. It passes into the subconscious, is swallowed, and becomes a part of the individual, is assimilated. The fruit of this process should not be consumed in the digestive process. Only very young children have the idea of eating excrements. The fruit of the mental process is the external manifestation, meaning the circumstances and experiences produced by the images we have in the subconscious. It is this aspect that is symbolized by the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It is not a physically existing tree somewhere, but rather a symbolic figure that accurately describes the mental process and the laws that govern it. With our knowledge of the laws of creation set forth in the previous chapters, we are the tree that produces the fruit of this knowledge. We are warned in Moses' text not to eat the fruit we produce, meaning not to judge based on what we see produced externally. We should also not form erroneous concepts based on what we see happening, because what happens is only the fruit of inner knowledge, whether that knowledge is based on good or evil. Again, let us not form opinions based on what we see, for that would be eating the fruit. Let us consult the divine being, and truth will always guide us on a straight path. This explanation, for example, is incomprehensible to those who do not have very erudite knowledge, and even scholars miss the key. This is because they are saturated with images based on intellectual knowledge. Intellectual knowledge acts like a tyrant that allows neither advancement nor upward vision. In the Bible, spiritual ideas are described as children because they are pure and do not know evil. Those filled with erudition consider this a childish matter. The last link in the chain that begins with the first erroneous thought is death. Imagine a rope with a knot in the center. To the right of the knot, the rope reaches its end and has relaxed and widened, while to the left of the knot, the rope continues without its end in sight. In this analogy, an ant stands at the center of the knot, looking in which direction to go. Eventually, it chooses the rope to the right, because it sees it is wider and more comfortable. Upon reaching the end, it will fall into space. If it opts for the rope to the left, even though it is narrower, it will quickly adapt and continue its path steadily and safely forever. This is the picture of what happens when one chooses to think negatively or positively. The negative path seems easier and ends quickly, while the positive path is the narrow gate and the narrow path that leads to life. However, few are those who find it. The original sin is the decision made at the knot, and death is inevitable on the negative path. It is a natural outcome of this path, but nothing prevents us from turning back. We do not have to die. We can resolve this. Jesus said death would be the last enemy we would conquer. He promised it. Great initiates do not die, they transcend. Moses transcended. Elijah transcended. Jesus did not die. The sacred scriptures do not say he died. They say he gave up his spirit, which means something very different in metaphysical terms. This is equivalent to projecting the astral body, the soul, out of the physical body. In surgical operations, doctors fill the physical body with ether, chloroform, or other substances of the same consistency as the astral body. This one is expelled because similar substances no longer leave room for it in the body. There may be hundreds, even thousands of cases where operated people say they saw themselves standing beside their sleeping body and saw the entire process of the operation. The astral body is attached to the physical body by a thread of the same astral substance. When it separates from the physical body, they remain connected by this thread, which is elastic and can stretch over long distances. The Bible calls it the silver cord because it has a slightly luminous grayish color. As the operated patient eliminates the substance that made him unconscious, the astral body progressively reinvests the physical body. The astral body is the one that feels and is conscious. When it leaves the physical body, the latter ceases to feel and become aware. When a human being dies, it's because the cord has broken. The two bodies separate, and the astral continues to live. At the moment Jesus exclaimed from the cross, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" He projected his astral body and ceased to feel anything else. His appearance was as if he were dead or in a state of deep unconsciousness. After his body was placed in the mausoleum provided by Joseph of Arimathea, his astral body reunited with his physical body. Then the women of Jerusalem went to seek Jesus' body, and a character whom the church calls an angel said to them, "Why do you seek the living among the dead?" It couldn't be clearer than that. He was alive, then he transcended. However, due to the alteration made in the documents, it was preferable to say that he had risen, as if a being of such high vibration could ever die. As you cleanse your subconscious of negative images, the cells of your body will transform by becoming positive. You will be, so to speak, heading towards the goal of life. When you have finished learning the lesson that is incumbent upon you in this life you are living, you will not die in the current sense of the term. You will simply pass into the other plane without inconvenience, without having suffered any illness. You will peacefully depart one night during your sleep. It is fitting to admire the will for perfection that animated the saints of the Catholic Church. However, due to their ignorance of the science of good and evil, they inflicted horrible tortures on themselves, which were not only useless but also an unforgivable offense against their own bodies. The body itself is the temple of the divine being, and as such we have a duty to care for it and take care of it. The extreme degree of negativity represented by floggings and voluntary tortures produces such an acidic state that the poor body cannot bear it and develops ulcers. That is why so many saints died from advanced tuberculosis. This is called serving God. The more people learn about the laws of creation, the more the dark masses of error that penetrate the planet will dissolve. False images in the subconscious will disappear, human cells will rebuild, and the number of people dying will decrease. Death will be the last enemy to conquer, and the return to the path of life has already begun. It seems that in the next millennium, truth will be universally known. Einstein argued that when the human cell transforms into electrical energy, each individual will know their own equation and will be able to disintegrate and reintegrate their body at will. So when the being leaves their physical body, what we know as death, and enters the next plane, what will surprise them most is to see that everything they think will manifest instantly before their eyes. In this state, their thoughts will immediately become reality, as there is no inert matter to delay the process. The object or condition will appear simultaneously with the thought. This can potentially cause chaotic confusion, leading the individual to believe they are truly in purgatory or hell. However, family members and friends will always be there to guide and explain to them the conditions of the plane and reincarnation. Why don't we remember our past lives, truth students always ask. It's a good thing it happens this way. The great wisdom of God and His laws are the reason. First of all, if I were to ask you now what you did last Tuesday, unless it was an important date for you, you would answer me, "I don't remember, I should think about it." You would waste time remembering something as useless, superfluous, and unprofitable as bringing the past into the present. What would you gain by reliving those past days? Probably, you would relive something unpleasant, as there is always something unpleasant in the past. You have been a criminal, a prisoner, a woman of ill repute, a slave, etc. If you could remember those bygone eras, you would feel as unhappy as you were again. If you managed to remember the time when you were a king or queen, you would have a very bad time seeing the injustices and foolishness you committed. Your current soul could not bear it. When you mentally return to such a distant past, it's like you've just taken a bath, been well groomed and perfumed, then forced to plunge into mud, filled with garbage where you couldn't even move to get your head out and breathe. If one of your past lives was very prosperous and luxurious, returning to your current state, you will feel very bad, very dissatisfied, and you will find that this life is inferior to that one in terms of material well-being. Life is a school, and each life is a degree more advanced than the previous one. If one life is fulfilling and the next one is mediocre, it is because something has been wasted or neglected, and it needs to be done over. God's love knows no hell. No one is condemned eternally. Everything has forgiveness. Everyone has a chance, up to 70 times 7, as Jesus said. Karma is the law of cause and effect. Coincidence does not exist. Everything has a cause. Every cause has an effect. There is good karma and bad karma. You already know this. It is the debt we incur for evil and the payment for good. The divine being is the Lord of karma. In its essence, it is not subject to karma, which means that it is possible to eliminate negative karma by directing our attention towards the divine being and getting used to residing in its abode. This is also mentioned in Psalm 91. When the human being acquires what is called spiritual consciousness, that is, being aware of respecting the laws that have already been set forth. In this state, we are not subject to material laws, but under grace, and we have the right to invoke higher laws. Many karmic effects are automatically dissolved because the individual often elevates their thought. They do not realize their privilege until they compare what happens to others and what is spared them. At that moment they are amazed and think they are protected by an invisible presence. Reincarnations cease when the individual has developed love for all without distinction, when they know how to put themselves in the place of others and understand the reasons that drive them to act as they do, when they feel they have nothing to forgive because everything that has been done to them is simply a natural reaction of a lower evolutionary plane. At that moment, this individual has nothing more to learn and does not need to return to this plane. The destination is love. Those who were enemies in one life often are born mother and son in the next life to force them to love each other. Nature always seeks to unite through love, to heal, and to reform through love. Psalm 91 says, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust." It is this affirmation that produces the conditions listed in the psalm, for He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His pinions, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and buckler. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. Try to understand the hidden symbols in these promises. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. In other words, when you have said, "O Lord, you are my refuge," and made this affirmation your norm, by constantly consulting the divine, no harm will come to you, and no calamity will enter your home. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. In other words, so that you have not the slightest inconvenience, you will tread on the lion and the adder. The young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot. Because he holds fast to me in love, I will deliver him. I will protect him, because he knows my name. The name is the biblical language of the nature of truth. He will call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. The law of cause and effect is the sixth law of creation. Every effect has a cause, every cause has a reaction. Chance does not exist, luck does not exist. The Bible says that love covers a multitude of sins. To Mary Magdalene, many karmic consequences were removed because, according to Jesus, she had loved much. The seventh law of creation is the principle of generation, which I have already explained to you. There is a masculine principle and a feminine principle necessary for creation. All laws intertwine, and they converge with the principle of mentalism with which we began this book. Generation manifests on all planes, each of them being of a higher form, but the principle remains the same. Jesus often mentioned this world and the other world, symbolized by the sign of Aquarius. He also predicted many changes for the end of the world. Once, the apostles asked him when this end of the world he had predicted so much would come. And Jesus answered them, "When you see the man in the water jar." We do not know if the apostles understood the allusion, but for this generation it is very clear. Everyone knows that the zodiac establishes the precession of the equinoxes, or in other words, it is a circle in the stellar firmament composed of groups of stars. Each group has a name according to astrology, and each month of the year is ruled by one of the groups of stars or zodiac signs. There are 12 signs, one for each month of the year. Each sign is accompanied by what they call a regent, who determines the nature of the sign. But the zodiac has a much deeper meaning. Let's say that outside the small circle representing the 12 months of the year, there is a much, much larger circle. It is so large that it occupies space for about 2160 years, which corresponds to one zodiac sign. This means that each sign with its regent governs humanity for 2 millennia and more. At the end of each era, the prevailing sign begins to fade or move away, and simultaneously, we begin to feel the influence of the next sign and the characteristics of the new regent. What this implies is that the sign is like the agenda for all humanity during these 2 millennia, and it can be read perfectly. The sign that has just passed is that of Pisces, and it began to recede at the end of the last century. But throughout the era when it acted, humanity was influenced by the fish. Christians called Jesus the fish, and they even adopted a fish drawing as a symbol to indicate where they would gather. It was the time of persecutions. The prevailing Catholic religion over the past 2 millennia unconsciously showed the shape of the fish in the bishop's mitre, a fish head with an open mouth, as well as in the Gothic shape of church entrances and in many other features. Human mood became tearful like seawater, and it delighted in suffering. Novels were emotional dramas, and melodrama prevailed everywhere. Everything was heavy like the volume of the sea, and it was the time of great sea voyages. Water has 2 phases like everything, and they are negative because it rots everything in contact with it for too long, and positive because life is born in it and contains the quantity of potential. The color of this sign was black, negative towards the end of the era, as the Aquarius sign approached, in which we find ourselves now. There was the reaction called crisis, like when a disease reaches its climax and all symptoms worsen just before improving. It was also at this time that the submarine was invented, meaning the boat descended into the depths of the sea, further accentuating its resemblance to a fish up to the silvery color. As we delve deeper into the Aquarian age, which is an air sign, the submarine developed wings and became an airplane, still silver. The character of Aquarius is that of a gardener, represented by a man carrying a water vase on his shoulder. He always helps manage water, but in reasonable quantities. The celestial gardener will cultivate his garden so that the plants bloom and humanity perfects itself. The sign features two irregular lines at the gardener's feet, symbolizing new trends of thought, electrical currents, changes in the air, etc. Electricity was discovered at the end of the last century and gradually invaded our lives until we live in it, with it, alongside it, and surrounded by it. We are opening new pathways in the sky. Electricity graduated under the title of electronics. The element that will transform everything in a new and different era is uranium, named after its regent, Uranus. Signs alternate between positive and negative. Aquarius is positive for this era. The union of religions with science is foreseen. There will be no predominant religion like the Catholic Church in the previous era. All will come together in one truth. Each sign change brings significant upheavals on the planet and in the mind. The new sign acts as a purge that revolutionizes all the old to leave a clean slate, prepared for the selection that the new sign brings. The color of this sign is white. It is the spiritual era, and in the history of humanity, it will be the most magnificent that has ever prevailed. The signs we see, so alarming and disturbing, mean nothing other than the destroyer, named Uranus, who cleanses on a large scale. Destruction is very beneficial as it eliminates everything that is bad and old to make way for the new and beautiful. This is what Uranus does. Blessed be he. In the era of biblical patriarchs, they were distinguished by pastoralism. It was the era of Aries, the ram. In the era of the Egyptians, the sign was Taurus, influenced by the bull. They were cattle breeders and worshipped the bull. In this new era, there will no longer be supreme leaders. Gurus, imperators, grand masters, etc. will disappear. Each will water their own garden, guided by the divine self, the Messiah, the Anointed. Warning: keep in mind that this book should not be read only once to think that you have understood everything. Reread it, and you will see that what you find there is new, more logical, and more interesting with each reading. This will happen every time you reread it, because truth is a vital force that awakens dormant cells. As you begin to apply the laws you learn here, you may experience demonstrations that seem miraculous. Enthusiasm will drive you to want to share your new knowledge, but it is important to avoid convincing others of the truth. You will be surprised to see that some people you thought were receptive may be less friendly towards you. As an occult maxim says, when the disciple is ready, the master appears. If someone asks you for advice, teach with love. If you ask the divine to speak through you, you will know what words to share. Noblesse oblige, as another maxim mentions, and those who learn the higher laws have a responsibility to use them correctly, more than those who are ignorant of them. Never try to stand out at the expense of others simply because you possess this knowledge. Whoever believes they are entitled to use their knowledge to the detriment of others, or who, because of their superior knowledge, considers themselves exempt from following the common rules of decency, will face sometimes extremely severe punishments for trying to circumvent the laws. The metaphysician stands out as an exemplary tenant, the closest friend, the most loving father, the fairest leader, the most committed citizen, the most respectful son, the most respectful debtor, the most understanding boss, and the most diligent employee.